British Columbia section. So we are going to be talking about topics of interest to British Columbians and when doing tax in British Columbia. But tonight we've all finished our theory exam, and now the theory portion of the course is behind us, and we are going to be looking at tax software over the next 3 sessions. So tonight it is BlockPro Level 1. BlockPro is the software that we at H&R Block use in our tax offices. It is a proprietary software, but even if you don't come to work for H&R Block, it is a good example of a typical software package which will allow us to practice some of the tax theory and skills that we have been developing so far. All right. Now, that said, the same general rules and guidelines that we've been using in the course up to this point still apply. So if you guys have any trouble with sound, follow the checklists here. Tonight we are going to be shifting back and forth between browsers and Windows a bit. So if there is any issues in the classroom, just let me know, students. And if you have any troubles with sound, bear in mind some of the idiosyncrasies of WebEx. So welcome back, everyone. According to the schedule for Monday, Wednesday classes, the exam is actually technically due today. So it's possible some of you watching this have not finished the exam yet, but I encourage you to finish the exam first, because you need to finish the exam in order to access the software in ULearn. So anyone who hasn't done that, you'll just have to follow along as best you can. The intention of this lesson is for me to talk you through a couple of demonstrations of the software tonight, but also you can try doing it on your own computer as we are working along. The idea is that you have already tested your access to the software and you have access to it as we are going through. All right. Now, Diane asks a question: is BlockPro available to individuals completing their own return as well, or only to H&R Block employees? I believe the commercial version of we have a software package which is available to individuals who want to do it yourself, and that is accessible through our H&R Block website. I think it is slightly different from BlockPro because BlockPro has some higher level capabilities, but that's not the software I use, so I'm not so familiar with it. In general, though, the principles that are important when using one piece of tax software are going to be important when you use another piece of software. BlockPro is relatively new software for us. We are in the process of shifting from an older piece of software, and when I joined the company 15 years ago, we migrated from an even earlier piece of software. So from time to time, we move to different software packages. So being able to, it's more about, to us, more about being familiar with the general concepts behind tax software and being adaptable enough to work with whatever your current software package is. So yes, we do have a free online software which is available to the public. BlockPro is what we use in our offices. It is relatively new, at least in a public-facing version. We have been using it in development since I think a year before COVID struck. So COVID kind of really gave us a chance to test it out under some harsh real life conditions. So it's not what can I say? It's not untested software or anything like that, but it is relatively new as our main piece of software, is what I can say. All right. It also didn't used to be called BlockPro. We had a naming contest last year. I suggested some very good and useful names such as Green Square and Square Pro software and things like that, but for some reason the company decided that Block Pro would be more marketable, and so I didn't win the trip to Tahiti or whatever the prize was. But still, it's a very solid name. It describes what it's all about. So, as always, questions are very important, particularly for this recorded session, students, because you are here, you can ask questions. The people following along at home can't ask questions. So you are kind of a proxy for the wider audience. So if there's anything that seems unclear or you'd like me to expand upon, please feel free, ask away. And we will be able to, that way, after all, if something's unclear to you, it's going to be unclear to somebody else. All right, that said, we should be in and out by 9 o'clock tonight. Past experience suggests to me, learning from past experience when I am demonstrating software, it's a little bit unpredictable for how much time it will take, but we should be able to be finished by 9, and we're going to be covering the first 2 exercises from the textbook. And if you haven't found the exercises in the textbook yet, don't worry, I will show you where to find those. Okay, so we are going to be going then through exercise 1 and 1-1 and 1-2 in the textbook, and talking about how to navigate the student learning environment. All will have one check. I'm sure I'm not missing anything before I skip forward. Yes. If you do have trouble during the setup, they do want me to mention this. If you do have trouble setting up the training environment, the tax academy training environment for Block Pro, should be on the next slide here. Right. So the instructions are going to be in your transcript. And they will become available after you complete the theory exam and you learn. So by the time you get to this point, you should have already set up your account and logged in. And again, because the exam was due today, if you haven't done it yet, don't worry, just follow along as best you can. But if you are watching this at home and you haven't finished the theory exam, pause the recording, finish the theory exam, and then come back to this fresh. Okay, we will wait for you. Okay, now, and again, if you have any technical difficulties, just as if you had any technical difficulties during the exam, there is technical support contact information in the learner guide. Just check in and they will be able to help you. One thing I have found, you also have them in the assignment 2 section in ULearn. Oh, well, that's great then. You may already have it. So it should be in, Sunit, it should be in ULearn, in your transcript, so have a look for it. And Diane, you say you already had it in assignment 2. Well, that's good. All right. And Christina is asking, how long will we have access to the course materials? You should have access to them until February, at which point we will be sending out a link to a PDF for the various textbooks. You can also download and print them now manually if you want, or at least sections of them. If you're wanting to have something to work with before then. But yes, I believe the plan is for that to go out sometime in February. Are they available 24 hours? Mohammed, I'm not sure. Not sure what you're meaning with that question. But as far as I know, there's no outages planned with ULearn, but I do think they have been known to do updates at like 3 in the morning on a Friday or on a Saturday night or something like that. But in general, you should be able to access the transcript in ULearn, and Block Pro is normally accessible all hours of the day. Oh, tech support. I think their phone number is not available 24 hours, but their email address is monitored. So if you do run into trouble in the middle of the night, just use the email address, and they'll get back to you as soon as they can. All right, good, good, good. All right, so on that note, then let's have a look at exercise 1-1. Now you may say, whoop, no break for you yet. All right, so all right, where are the exercises? You may say, well, if you look in your library in Inkling, what you want to do is find BlockPro for Tax Academy. And yes, because I'm on the writing team, I see all 572 textbooks we currently have. But if you just type in BlockPro for Tax Academy, you should be able to find it. Make sure you choose level 1, not level 1 for Quebec, because that's got stuff that we don't need to worry about here in British Columbia. Now, the BlockPro ink doc is much shorter than the main textbook, and generally it's just organized in chapters to show you how to set up various things within the software. And then, so it has 8 chapters covering various things, and then the first one talks about things like navigating the environment. In particular, it helps to familiarize yourself with various things. It's mainly aimed at people who haven't had a chance to sit in on this session, but there is, as always, more information in the textbook than we are able to enter here. Now, one thing I do want to note, that the navigation section here kind of points out the various things you're going to see, and it has a list of the hotkeys. So you can find these in the ink doc as well. You can bring them up within the software by doing Control-Shift-K. And then that will bring up a list of the other hotkeys here. Our old software used a lot more in terms of hotkeys. BlockPro tends to has fewer hotkeys by comparison, so I tend not to use them. But but some people really like and make use of hotkeys, so be aware that they are there for you. At the end of this textbook, then, are the exercises and the case studies. So the way it works is I'm going to be demonstrating the software by going through the exercises 1 through 3, and if time allows, I will do 1-4. And then there are 5 case studies, and those are for you, the students, to do at home. I'll just pull up one, for example. And you can follow along with this as I'm working. So it's for a taxpayer named Ida Gare, who is single. We have some information for Ida. We have a T4 for Ida with some information for it. T4 for Fred's Gym. And some information for federal and provincial claims. Ida earned $8,000 in tips through the year, and she wants to receive her notice of assessment electronically and has never set this up before. Okay, so to start with, a fairly nice, simple, straightforward scenario. All right, so when we open up BlockPro, you're going to get a view that looks like this. For me, because I'm a writer, I can toggle between different views which look more elaborate. So the instructor view, whoop, doesn't trust me. Yes. There we go. So the instructor view is more, the writer view is more elaborate. The instructor view, not quite so much. And the student view, this will be the only one that you've got access to. Last year, we didn't have that simple drop-down menu, and I needed to be kind of careful about which one I was looking at. So for you, so hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is what BlockPro looks like. So it is a browser-based software. This is the major shift which happened in this software as opposed to the previous software that we used. It is accessed via your browser, and so from a company point of view, this gives us more flexibility in how we access and work with people's tax returns. They are no longer hosted on individual machines and downloaded from a central database in quite the same way. For you at home, this means you are going to be able to, every time when you're opening it up in your browser, you will be accessing our training database for students online and be able to work with some things. Now, one challenge some people have with the training version of Block Pro is it doesn't always play nice with certain browsers depending on what's in your cache. So for example, I have it open up in Firefox. And that seems to work okay for me because for me, clearing my cache is kind of involved. So it's just easier to run it in Firefox, and then it doesn't get in the way of all my various lecture materials which are over in Chrome. So if you are finding trouble getting it to open in a browser or things like that, try either emptying your cache or using a different browser and see if you have better results there. Now, the interface is relatively straightforward at this level. You can see there's a button to practice, and you can reset the practice. So if we click practice, this will, for example, open a blank return if we want to do that, and that is indeed what we want to do here. I don't want to do that just yet because I want to show you what's on the surface. Notice we can reset practice if we haven't already. Up here, you can sign out of your account should you need to. That's probably not going to be so much of a concern for you guys, although it's good practice to do that when you finish with your session for a day, just to make sure everything saves off nicely. There's a language toggle over here. We can go to French or to English. This becomes Compt. And student view becomes Point de vue de étudiant. So that's good. Okay, but otherwise not too much here. So notice there are blank returns here I can look at if I want to find one. So if I want to look at British Columbia and level 1, it's got various chapter view problems if I were to work on them, but I don't want to. I want to work on an exercise. And notice the various exercises come here, exercises 1 through 4. Now, that said, I'm just going to practice by opening up a blank return, and we will go from there. Now, for Heidegger, when you're doing it, you probably will want to keep the information in the textbook open in another window or on another tablet, ideally. You can print it out. There is a printer icon up here. Sometimes it doesn't play nice with the printer, so if all else fails, you can just highlight everything and right-click and do the print function like that for the entire page, and then just right-click and hit print, and that can be effective as well. For us, for me anyway, when I try to use the button here, it tries to generate a PDF, and that sometimes can be a little time-consuming. Okay, so back over here. So this is, once we click practice, we open a new blank return. So notice parts of the interface is still the same. It's still got my login information up here. I can toggle between English and French. And there's a button here, calculate and save. This will save your work. Generally, when we are working on a tax return, whenever we are finished with a section, we like to hit calculate and save, and it will update the return. I will demonstrate that for you shortly. All right. Over here on the left is a navigation menu. We can, if we want this to go away, we can click the X here, or to collapse it. In this software, data entry is organized in sections. So the first one is the client interview. This is kind of where we enter the basic information for the taxpayer that you would see on pages 1 and 2 of the return. Client return here is where we're going to be entering more of the tax information. Review is where we're going to make changes and get an overview of the return. And then e-file is for the final steps of the return. So for now, we just need to enter our client's personal information to start to turn this from a blank return into a return for a specific person. All right, so we will enter Ida's first name. If applicable, some people only have a family name. A recent change, a few years ago, this gave the CRA real trouble. For people who only have one name, it is entered in the last name field. Older software packages may have trouble with this. In this case, Ida Gehr, we will enter like that. Now, when you are entering someone's name, obviously you need to be very careful about entering personal information scrupulously accurately, because the CRA will do essentially a kind of identity check when you try to download information for a client or a taxpayer. They will compare it to the information they have on file, which can cause problems if they think the taxpayer's name is something different than what the taxpayer has on their ID. So you need to be somewhat careful about that. This can be a real challenge when somebody is first entering the country, first doing their taxes for the first time, because sometimes what the government thinks someone's name is may not exactly be what's on the passport. Still, it's gotten a little better over years. How do you get back to reset? So so you can calculate and save. It's probably not going to let me do that without putting in a social insurance number. Actually, Valerie, I just saw a note about this. Yes, let me pull it up here. So notice that what you want to avoid is using the back button. Instead, click on the other tab, and that will set from there. And let's see what that does. Yes, I do. All right. Okay, so that won't reset this one, but if I close it, right, notice it will give you a warning that it might not save what you want to save. All right. And let's move our chat window over a bit to the right. Let's see. Okay, that'll give us a bit more space. All right, if I need to. All right, so let's put in Ida's name. Ida Gehr. And the social insurance number and date of birth. Remember, we have to be extraordinarily careful about this because this is how the CRA verifies someone's identity, and it is possible to file the wrong return with the wrong social insurance number. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. So you really want to make sure that this is the correct person with the correct social insurance number, because if a mistake somehow slips through, it can be very difficult and time-consuming to get that mess cleaned up. All right, and Humaira is asking, If you're not able to find the exercise 1-1, remember exercise 1-1 is in the textbook, right? Block Pro for Tax Academy level 1. And remember with that, Block Pro for Tax Academy, remember that you want to select the version for 2025. And not the one for Quebec, although they are right next to each other. So, but yeah, if you go in there and the exercises are completely different, you've accidentally clicked Quebec most likely, or a different year. Okay. All right. Back to 1-1. So Ida Gare, we put in her social insurance number, 870-009-594. And her date of birth is October 9th, 1993. So in this software, it is day, month, year. So that would be 09-10-1993. Now, you want to be a bit... Canada is one of the few places on Earth where more than one standard is in use for how dates are entered. We actually use all three. So it's not impossible that you may be working with more than one piece of software at once that may have different date formats in use. But here in Block Pro, it's helpfully listed as day, month, year. And that is October 9th, 1993, 09-10-1993. Oh, make sure my numbers lock is on. There we go. 09-10-1993. There we go. All right. You can also hit return to enter it, but simply clicking off will do it. All right. Now, did this person change their surname in 2024? The answer here is no. The purpose of this is to let the CRA know if this name is going to be different from what the CRA has on file. So this is intended for use when a married person changes their name, but this function can also effectively be used to correct an error to the name on the CRA's part. So if they have the name misspelled or anything like that, you can also use this feature to say, yes, there is a change, and then just send the new name along. All right. Name of the client's legal representative, if applicable. What does this mean? We haven't talked about this much in level 1 because at this level we are not going to be dealing with this very much, but the legal representative here generally is used, this field is used when someone is completing the tax return for someone else. So for example, the executor of an estate, they complete the tax return for someone who has passed on. A bankruptcy trustee would also fall into this category when they have to do certain returns. And also, many people have what's called power of attorney. So this allows a trusted person, typically a relative, to do the taxes for a person. So elderly taxpayers will often allow one of their children to have power of attorney, or if a husband and wife, one of them is incapacitated in the hospital, they may have power of attorney. There's a variety of scenarios in which case this can happen. We are not going to be dealing with that in this course, but that's what it's for. So if someone is a legal representative, we can select the case that applies, either executor, a trustee, administrator, or somebody exercising power of attorney. And notice there's an option to select if someone passed away. None of this applies in this case, of course. All right. We then move on to the mailing address. And the general order that we are going to follow, that the software follows, is the order in which we would encounter fields on the tax return. So for Ida, she obviously lives in Canada, and then we will enter her address. Now, care of is when someone else is receiving the mail for someone. This is not necessarily a case of someone being a legal representative. It may be that just someone's on vacation and they want someone else to handle the mail while they're away or something like that. So, right, unit would be for an apartment number or similar case. So this Ida's address is 1919 Bathurst Street, number 1110. So we will put in the unit number 1110. The street number, so this would be the 1919, and then the street name, Bathurst Street. Some software packages may combine some of these fields, but they should all follow this general sequence. If there's a post office box or a rural route identifier, those would be entered down here. Everything with a red asterisk, by the way, as you might guess, is mandatory and represents kind of the minimum information which needs to be entered. So, see that city, province, and postal code are mandatory. The city, Vancouver, because that's where I am. Province is going to be British Columbia. So notice we can click, we can use our arrow keys to navigate within the drop-down menu, arrow up, arrow down. If I type in the first letter, it will bring that up. So if I put in A, it'll highlight Alberta, B, highlight British Columbia, and then click on that. And then for the postal code, just a typical postal code for our region. So B1V, 1V1, there we are. And did the mailing address change in 2024? The answer here would be no. There's no indication that this has changed. So nope. Did the client reside outside of Canada at any time during the tax year? So the answer here is no. This is a full year resident. But notice the phrasing here. This says reside outside of Canada. So this doesn't mean someone on a vacation. This doesn't mean someone who is temporarily out of the country on a short work assignment. This means living outside of Canada at any time during the year. So if someone was not living outside of Canada at any point, then the client is ordinarily resident for the entire tax year. If I were to select something different here, then we would select what case applied. So for example, if we said immigrated, then we would need to add more information. Right? So let's put that back because we're not getting into partial year scenarios in this course. Things get very complicated very quickly when you have immigration and emigration and the like. Okay, so we now enter the details of Ida's residence. So Ida's province, a territory of residence on December 31st. So that's going to be British Columbia. Is the home address the same as the mailing address? We'll put yes. Notice there's a field if someone has moved to a different province or territory. And then this software is very question driven. Some of the questions are a little are more common than others, but they are all here just in case they come up. So some of them are not going to be applicable at this level, say. But for example, was Ida exempt from paying taxes in Canada because she was working for another country? Nope, she was not a diplomat. Was she in prison? No. Did Ida sell her principal residence? No. But you can see that would be something which we have talked about in this course. And did she dispose of a housing unit that she held more than 365 days? So the property flipping rule. Okay, no would be here. And notice the software gives you a little note because you answered no to this question. Ida is not considered to have any property flipping, but you should still in Schedule 3 if it applies. So if someone did sell property, then it should come in here. All right, the foreign property question from the textbook, we can see that she has no specified foreign property, but she is a Canadian citizen. And for British Columbia, two mandatory. So first, the Elections Canada question, and she wants to say no. So remember this question. Just a reminder, this question is about whether someone authorizes the CRA to give Elections Canada their address information to update the national electors list, or if they are under 18 to put them on the register of future electors. And for British Columbia, for the last year, there's also a question about whether someone would like the CRA to give their contact information to BC Transplant for the purposes of being contacted for with more information about organ and tissue donation. Now, in this case, we don't have any information from the exercise to indicate that she wants to. In the absence of affirmative consent, we will always put down no. Of course, if we were speaking to the client, had the client in front of us, we would simply ask them directly if they would like this information. Notice there's a clarification here that Ida is not consenting to organ or tissue donation by saying yes. If she said yes, this is simply to receive more information about it. Now, contact information for the client, we would put in here. So for Ida's phone number, we have 555-409-6656. And if there's a work number, we would add that here. Now, instructions for family management here. CIS is our scheduling software we use at H&R Block. You can ignore any reference to that. That's not going to apply to you. All it's simply putting in here is if someone is getting married, if you are adding dependents or anything like that, specific steps need to be followed so as not to cause issues talking to the scheduling software, but you can ignore that here. All right, working our way down, and notice we're still over here in the family information section here. We enter Ida's marital status, which is single. And did this change in 2024? There's no indication that it changed, so we will say no. Often, if someone is coming in getting their taxes done year over year, one of the first questions I will ask the client is, okay, have there been any changes from last year? Because I would have their marital status on file from last year, and that tends to speed things along. And do they have any dependents to claim? No dependents are mentioned in the problem here, so we will put in no. We're going to calculate and continue. So notice calculate and save here is for the overall return. Calculate and continue is for the individual page. It will save this page and move you to the next page. This one up here will not. So if I hit calculate and save here, it should save it. And notice a little saved pop-up comes up to indicate that it's been saved. If I hit calculate and continue, this is the preferred method in this software to move from page to page. If you don't hit calculate and continue, sometimes you can result in losing your work. So hitting calculate and continue will save your data entry on a page, and that can be very frustrating if you have a page where you are doing a lot of detailed entry about, say, moving expenses or business expenses, and then you click the left-hand menu over here and navigate to another page without saving. So, all right. The next page we have is going to continue what we call the tax interview with the taxpayer, but we're moving away from tax personal information and starting to get into things which will affect the tax return. So, for example, did Ida complete 200 years of service as a volunteer, as an emergency services volunteer? And the answer is no. Does Ida have a disability? The answer is no. Here we would enter numbers here if Ida is making a claim for various things. So you can see these correspond to various tax credits. So are there any teaching supply expenses? Is IDA claiming the home buyer's amount, and so on. When we look at the exercise, information of this type is going to tend to be down near the bottom after the T4s. So we can see that there are going to be federal and provincial political contributions and a labor-sponsored venture capital contributions receipt federally, as well as $8,000 in tips. So these are kind of the 4 things that are a bit unusual that we're going to want to keep an eye out for with this particular return. Okay. All right. So teaching supply expenses, none. Home buyer's amount, none. Income and pension benefits for religious order, nothing like that. Additional deductions such as exempt foreign income, adult basic education, tuition assistance, and so on, nothing like that. A question here. Now somebody is making the observation that some of the questions here might be difficult to ask someone. And how would you ask someone like this in an interview section? Now, of course, I don't want to get too much into our proprietary training or anything like that. But as a general rule, people are if you are working through the software with someone, people tend to be understanding if you just say, oh, this particular software is very question driven and it wants to know various things. And some questions can be fairly, if you need to kind of tailor your approach to the individual client, right? Obviously, something about prison or organ donation could be a sensitive topic. But for prison, you can say, we're just going through, and you would combine it with the other questions. You would say, here, let me just calculate and save. But to give you an example, so just clicking back here will take you back. Don't use your back button. Just click on the menu to navigate. So, would I ask these questions in person? Absolutely. But typically I would do this with the software in front of me and possibly the client, and I would go through, okay, I need to ask you some questions. Did you have any property outside Canada? You're a Canadian citizen. If you are a Canadian citizen, do you authorize Election Canada to give your information to the voters list? And this one's a sensitive topic. There's been a change to the tax code where BC Transplant would like to send out information, giving people information about organ donation. So if you're interested, I can say yes to that. Obviously, it's a sensitive topic, so if you'd rather not, we can just leave that alone. And so on. If you can just keep a conversational tone speaking to people, that will work in most cases. Obviously, you will need to tailor your approach somewhat, but if you have a sense of humor with it, you can certainly work through it. To give you an example, do you have any property worth over $100,000 outside Canada? Did you inherit any castles in the old country? Did you receive a mysterious inheritance from Mr. Dracula? Anything like that? If you can keep a light tone, that will go a long way. If that doesn't work, just simply being serious and professional about it will also go a long way. You should tailor your approach to the person you are speaking to. Obviously, some of this information is sensitive, so you don't necessarily want to be humorous with everything. But these are questions we ask. Now, I may move quickly over a question, right? If someone obviously isn't going to have a lot of property outside Canada, things like that. But depending on what they say, you can gauge your responses accordingly. We do not, when we hire someone, we do not throw them in an office and have them interviewing clients on their first day in the office. We have someone with them. We coach them through it and things like that. And any any tax company that you wanted to work to, that's kind of the minimum that I would expect from them, because you want to give people a chance to kind of develop their skills and their rapport talking to taxpayers. All right, so back to the tax interview here. So for these questions about teaching supply expenses, you might say, oh, the taxpayer doesn't know. Well, it's incumbent on us to know the tax theory, right? And this is why the theory is important. Teaching supply expenses, you need to know what that means, and you need to know what that applies to. So the question I would ask for something like that would be, did you work? It's actually a question is, did you work as a high school teacher or elementary school teacher? Did you have any expenses you paid out of pocket? Home buyer's amounts. Did you purchase a house, a new home in the year? Were you a monk or a nun? Did you give money to a religious order? And people are very understanding. If you say, I'm just working through these questions and I want to be thorough, so I want to make sure I ask all of them just to make sure I don't accidentally miss something, but obviously most of them are not going to apply to you. And if you do that, most people are very understanding and have a good time for it, because they just know you're being diligent, you're being thorough, and you're doing your job by just checking. This way you don't miss anything. All right, so labor-sponsored funds tax credit. So a registered fund eligible for a federal tax credit. Now, in British Columbia, labor-sponsored funds are eligible. So So the wording here I think is a little misleading, but in British Columbia you can still claim this credit. So the federal credit here is for $3,000, right? Checking the exercise. So this is the first thing we've seen from the bottom. So there is a labor-sponsored funds receipt for $3,000. So we will put that in here. 3,000. All right, now the question is, how do we enter this for British Columbia? So if we, go back here, what you might not have noticed in the textbook is that there's a chapter for all of the provincial information. So if we click on British Columbia, it has additional information on all the various things which come up and has more detail about all of them. And in this case, what we want is the Employee Venture Capital Corporation tax credit. So for this one, we're going to select British Columbia Employee Venture Capital Tax Credit on the tax documents and worksheets page. So let's just put that to the side. Notice there's also a section here for the BC Political Contribution Tax Credit. Let's put that to the side, and we'll come back to it once we get there. Okay, any employment expenses? We don't have anything like that. No payments from a wage loss replacement plan, nothing like that. And no amounts paid for a qualified digital news subscription, and no other deductions here. Now, as you can see, it's fairly important with this software, and I suspect most tax software you're going to encounter, it's fairly important to understand the implications of all these various questions. This is intended to be very user-friendly, so someone can pick up and use this software, but it's very important to understand the implications of what these various things are. Right? The rules for digital news subscription claim is not here. The rules around employment expenses are not here, right? You need to know expenses that should be entered on a T777, right? So most employment expenses are going here, but things like repaying the employer will go here. So all the theory we've been covering is very important for navigating tax software, because the current trend in tax software design is to make things look very sleek and user-friendly and things like this, but that comes at the cost of not always being obvious what uh, the rules are for a certain field. All right, other deductions here, for example, income amounts repaid, legal fees, etc. It's kind of incumbent on you, the tax professional, to know what other things would go here. All right, now I see a question. When someone drops off their information for taxes to be done, do you interview them over the phone? Yes, exactly, Valerie. Or I will get as far as I can. There's kind of two scenarios here. And again, I don't want to get into our proprietary practices or anything like this, but any reasonable observer would conclude that this is how a tax company would do it. It would depend on whether someone is a new client or not. If they're a client that's known to us, we can get a certain distance with the return and answer some questions simply based on the information they've left with us. But for other things, we would have to talk to them over the phone. If it's a new client, then we would want to interview them in person or in much more detail over the phone at a minimum, because we simply don't have any baseline to begin from. But if, say, one of my friends comes in to get their taxes done, I've done their tax for 5 years, I know a lot of their information, I'm going to be familiar with a certain amount of stuff, and then it really comes, it's more a question of, okay, were there any big changes this year? Did you have any new sources of income this year, right? And a lot of my clients, when they come in, I've been doing their taxes for 3, 5, 10 years plus. And our conversations are really more like, we're just catching up. What was new with you this year? From a tax point of view, were there any interesting developments, and so on and so forth. So it really depends on the case, but yeah, a lot of questions we will do over the phone. But when we deal with clients over the phone, we have to verify that it's actually them. So just like the CRA, depending on the situation, I might have to ask them some questions like, okay, can you prove that you are you by letting me know your address and postal code or things like that. Obviously, some of my clients are just so distinctive that it's not I instantly recognize the voice over the phone, but in general, we do have to take precautions. When we're interviewing someone in person, of course, it's much simpler because they're right there. I can check their ID. I know they are them. And then we can ask those questions. But yeah, we do interview over the phone, but we do need to take some precautions in that case. All right, so again, we're finished with this page. We're going to calculate and continue, and we're going to go to the last section of questions before we get to tax documents. All right, and these are questions kind of for CRA tracking purposes. So the CRA wants to know, is this return being prepared under the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program? So, is this a return being done for free by volunteers? No. What language does IDA want to use? That's going to be English. Is IDA filing a return with the CRA for the first time? This is a very important question because if someone has never filed a tax return in Canada before, the CRA has no baseline to compare the